How long have you been doing this podcast?
Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast has been around since 2020, actually, since late December 2020. And we've been sponsored by Joe Ross since the beginning, Higher Echelon. We appreciate Joe Ross sponsoring our podcast in Higher Echelon. And tonight we're going to talk to Kenny Dale Rowland, former Army defensive back for the Black Knights. Appreciate Kenny taking a couple minutes to chat with us. Thanks so much, Kenny.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sal.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit beforehand, about getting former players on, getting to tell their stories a little bit and doing some research on you. And just want to maybe get to know a little bit about how you kind of got to West Point. What was your path to West Point? What was kind of your recruiting story? Because it seems like a lot, even today, there's unique stories out there about recruiting and how West Point might have found you.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Ozarks, a little town, Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of the academies until my sister ended up working for our Congressman Bill Emerson when I was younger. And I grew up in a family of 7 kids, and somewhere I guess around 8 or 9, my dad took off. So here's my mom with I think 4 or 5 kids still at home, and I'm the baby, and I'm growing up, and so times got a little bit tough, and I really needed some. I was looking for some academic rigor, and so when I got through school and I was pretty good at football, our athletic director sent my tape up to Mizzou here in Missouri. Bob Stahl was the coach at the time, and he liked me, and we talked a few times about potentially walking on there, being a preferred walk on, and then there was a school that I was really interested in, which is the Washington University in St. Louis, which is a very rigorous school here in St. Louis, if you've heard of it. And got through my senior year, had a very good senior year. Was getting recruiting offers for a lot of D1 AA's and Division twos and stuff like that, but I was looking probably for just a more difficult academic place and free. That was definitely something that needed to happen. And somewhere around probably the end of my junior year, after being denied entry to the Naval Academy, Bill Sheridan called me, and he'd seen a film that we'd sent up to Washington. That film we'd sent up to Washington University, and he gave me a call and he said, "Hey, would you like to play at West Point?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'd love to play football." And he was selling me on the fact that our senior year we were going to play Notre Dame and Michigan, and that all sounded great, but really looking into the academy was just how academically rigorous it was. And he said, "Hey," he said, "Well, I'm going to send you an entry packet that you're going to have to fill out with all the interviews, all the letters of recommendation that you need, and you got to get this done in 1 week. And if you can do that, you can take the final spot at the West Point Prep School." And so he sent this packet. It showed up, and it was literally the same. It was the same one as the Naval Academy, but I guess at the time you had to fill everything out. It required a DOBMERB and a PAE and all these letters of recommendation. Well, I just pulled out my pen and recopied everything all my teachers and everybody had done for the Naval Academy, and I submitted it back. And he probably got it like 4 days later. I think we overnighted it for like $100 and something. My mom was excited. We sent it back to Bill. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't, how'd you turn it around so fast?" It was a very funny situation, but because of that, he ended up putting me in the very last spot. He told me there was 44 recruiting spots there to Fort Monmouth for the prep school, and I was number 44. So I think that was like March of '94, and I accepted that position and went to the prep school.
What was so Navy recruited you? Did you know of the
Navy didn't recruit me. I went through the application process to get into the Naval Academy, and just very ignorant at the time. Didn't even realize that there was an Air Force Academy, really. I kind of knew there was something called Army because of Army Navy. Wasn't planning on playing football at Navy. Was just wanted to get in. Knew it was going to be a free 4-year school for me, and it was going to be rigorous, and so that was my first choice as a sophomore and junior in high school. Didn't get in. Was first alternate. The guy who selected it went there. Um, was told something about a merchant marine academy, and I didn't understand what it was, and told the congressman not really interested. 17 years old making decisions for the rest of my life, and just got through the Christmas season and got into January and February, and I had some offers, and then Sheridan called, and that was just out of the blue. He'd seen that tape and gave me a shot at it, and I was lucky enough to have kept all the application stuff for the Naval Academy and was able to submit it rather quickly to him, and he had a deadline. It was like a week, and I think I beat it by 2 days, and that's how I ended up at the prep school. So
Yeah, the rest is history. I was going to ask you if you knew anything about like Army or Service Academy football before that, but
no,
maybe the Army Navy game every once you might have watched it or no?
no, honestly, I hadn't seen an Army Navy game until I sat in the stands in '94 to watch that game. They brought the prep school up to watch that game in 1994. So I sat in the stands and watched it.
Wow. What was life like at the prep school? Was that a good introduction to what you might be? Because did you have any military in your family or anything, or were you?
I had an uncle that served in Vietnam, but he didn't talk to me about it. And I had some great uncles that were in World War II, and they were tail gunners, and their stories were well, they were short. They weren't the longest stories in the world. So I didn't have a lot of idea of what kind of military experience I was going to get when I got to the prep school. And of course, you get off the bus and you're getting yelled at immediately. So it was an eye opener to me, and everything I'd brought that day was strewn everywhere within about, a 10-yard circle of me. I'm pretty sure one of those drill sergeants was a former kicker because he launched my stuff a good 30 feet, and just underwear and toothbrushes, and I remember I got there, and one of the other guys that was getting shook down at the same time, his name was Chris B, and we were like handing each other our stuff because it was just all over the place. So it was an eye-opening experience to end up at the prep school and be greeted like that. So
As that kind of prep school year progresses, how does the football go? And because I know talking to some former players, sometimes it's sometimes there's some calls home and saying, "Man, is this really for me?" or anything like that. But how did that year progress at the prep school for you?
I mean, it wasn't the easiest year. I didn't get to play a whole lot that year. There was I'll call him a blue chip recruit, but he was exceptionally. He was way better than I was, and his name was Adisa King, and he played free safety. So I got to play behind him. I showed up there. I was probably like 6'1", 6'2". I was still growing, probably about 170 pounds soaking wet, and I wasn't slow, but Adisa was a really good player. So I played behind him. We had a pretty good team. I think if I remember right, we might have lost 2 games to Lackawanna College or something that was a very good. Had a lot of D1 talent on it, and so it was a good year. Nothing really stands out in my mind about that season. Just learning to live on your own, away from home. Live in New Jersey. You had your weekends off, so I spent some time in the Stone Pony.
Really?
Yeah, and
Who did you see? Who did you see there? Do you
I
remember
saw Weezer at the Stone Pony. One of their first tours was held there at the Stone Pony. So,
hey Ken, I got a real funny story about that. I saw Weezer. Well, I was going to see Weezer at the Stone Pony. Now, I don't know if this is around the same. It might be around the same time. I don't know if it's the same show, but the act that went on before Weezer was so loud, I got like sick during the concert, like just like head spinning, that kind of stuff. And I went back to my car and I listened to Weezer from my car in the parking lot while my friend enjoyed the concert. You may have been at that concert, Ken. Who knows?
I was at the one at Stone Pony Asbury, and it would have been I think December of '94. So, and it was the first time I'd ever been in a mosh pit, and it was one of the first concerts. I think it was the first concert I'd ever been. I mean, I'm just a hillbilly from the Ozarks, and we didn't get to many concerts. They don't come down here, and so the mosh pit was crazy. I remember Larry Angles, who played defensive end for us on that Independence Bowl, was in the middle of it with me, and my shirt got ripped off and ended up on the floor multiple times, and that was my introduction to Weezer, the Stone Pony, and mosh pits all in one night. So.
Yeah, Stone Pony is an iconic venue for music, no doubt. Bruce Springsteen famous for playing there, and wow, that's good stuff right there. You move on to West Point, and what's that like? I mean, is Beast Barracks? Because I mean, down in Fort Monmouth, are you getting a taste of what Beast Barracks might be like that prep year, or is Beast Barracks like the freshman boot camp completely like a not a shock, but like a different, so to speak?
It was as difficult as that first year. I mean, not first year, but those first couple of weeks at the prep school. It was definitely more difficult. We'll just call it the psychological attacks that you get at Beast aren't as bad if you've been through the prep school. I remember our day, I took like a 4-hour nap. My roommate the first day comes blasting in, wakes me up, and I had to calm him down. He was doing uniform drills from the 6th floor of Eisenhower Hall, and he's just, after the third trip, he finally realizes that I'm sleeping on the cot, and I calm him down, and I'm like, just lay down. They've forgotten that you're even here. They're not even going to know you're not going to show up down there and in your PT clothes or your whites over grays or whatever stupid uniform they were putting you in at the time. And he laid down, and we took a nap during our day. It's like, we're going to get yelled at anyway. Let's just lay down here and see if they come find us. And they didn't. They never came and found us. So, but it was hard. Beast Barracks was not easy at all. I mean, the grind of it didn't seem to want to end. There wasn't a lot of happy cadets going through it while I was there. So, some of that rubs off on you a little bit. I enjoyed a lot of it. I enjoyed all the military aspects of it. But I would say there were a lot of people that were not, they were falling off left and right. I think our class, they brought in like almost 1,400 kids. And I want to say by the time Beast Barracks was over, there was only like 1,100, 300 of them left. It seemed like I knew most of them, they were all leaving. So.
Wow. And I mean, then you get, this is a time when you go from Beast Barracks right to football, preseason football camp, right? I mean, you weren't getting like the summer classes that they do now or anything like that. I mean, you weren't getting.
Yeah, I think I weighed in the two-a-days at like 163 pounds. I finished high school 2 years earlier at 177. I somehow lost 14 pounds, even though I played a year at prep school. It was hard, looking back on some things, I was in like the fast run group, and I shouldn't have been there. I probably should have laid off the fast run group, but somehow I ended up in it. And there I was trying to run up and down the Les Reservoir at like 6-minute mile pace. And I'm not a distance guy. So there were some things looking back on it. I probably could have used some mentorship. But you just, who's in a fast group, get up here. And there I was. And, so there were some things like that, but yeah, we went right into two-a-days. It was, they timed my 40, they timed our 40, like the first day there. And I ran like a 5.2. I was crushed. I couldn't believe it. I felt like my legs were made of concrete. So it wasn't the easiest time. Beast definitely was difficult.
Yeah, and talk to us a little bit about that freshman year for you on the football field. Is it like is it a scout team thing, or what was the experience like for you then?
Yeah, Jimmy Chum was was our scout team coach slash JV coach, and Jimmy was awesome. And rest in peace, Jimmy. But that was a really good year for me. I enjoy playing football. Just the drills, tackling, and blocking, and just the aspect of that one-on-one drills. So I got better as the season went on, but I never broke off a scout team. My first year, I didn't even think I dressed for any of the games, unless you count your uniform in the stands. It was hard on Saturday, but I loved Monday through Friday. Some great coaches there at the time. So
And you see, even with today's Army team, how Monken does a scout team finisher on offense and defense each week, and how important those scout team looks are for on Saturdays. And you probably you seem like a guy who took a lot of pride in that, I'm guessing.
You do your best out there, and in some cases, what's coming. You get to see you play the same offense week in and week out. So sometimes you get caught cheating a little bit, and especially as a freshman out there, if you step under an arc block, as a strong safety or force player, or cheat on a call. Ronnie Makeda was our quarterback, and he'd make a call, and you knew what the route was, and you cheat it. They would get in your rear end, but I enjoyed it. You get to go up against the best that our team had to offer, and
Yeah.
That was awesome.
What did sophomore year bring for you?
Sophomore year was a strange year. We came in spring ball. My freshman year, I'd made my way up to third string behind Bobby Brown and Matt Rogers at free safety, and I remember when I was there as a freshman, they put the depth chart up. It was like an old Mueller depth chart, and it went 7 deep, and then they had like a post-it note, and then there was Rowland at the bottom. I was like 8th string my freshman year, and that's how I started. And so getting through freshman spring ball, getting up to third string was a big deal, because now I was going to get to dress and potentially travel. So come back, after a summer at Buckner, and get to those first practices. And I was back down to, I think, 6th string. There was 3 freshmen that had come in. We'd gotten a new coach, Coach Sheridan, who had recruited me. He bumped me all the way down, and I was back on scout team to begin my sophomore year. So I was pretty unhappy with that. And probably the first time that I'd ever said anything to a coach, I told Coach Sheridan about it. I said I'm pretty unhappy. I want an opportunity to play this year. I didn't even get to dress last year, and so he set me down. We talked about it a little bit, and then he started rotating me back in up with the second and third string, and so eventually I made my way onto the travel team at third string. I guess I beat out all those freshmen. I can't really remember the particulars on it, but I did get to dress and play in quite a few games my sophomore year, and then I made my way up to second string eventually, and I got a little bit of playing time, and of course that year was unbelievable. We had such a great defense and a great offense. It's probably one of the better teams that I've been associated with attitude. So many great leaders on that 10-2 team. So sophomore year was just an absolute dream. All the time playing, but coming out of that freshman year of never even getting to dress for a game to now I'm travel and getting to play in the Independence Bowl. That was a big deal for me. I'm 20 years old or whatever, and just sucking it up. It was a good time.
Yeah, when you can make an impact on a team like that, right? Get into the game and games and make an impact. That's considered one of the best Army teams, maybe in the modern era. That says a lot. And I guess that kind of after that 10-2 season, after getting that taste, then your junior and senior years, then you become the next. You elevate, right, and you become like one of the leaders in the secondary. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, that was a we lost a lot of great leaders from that year, and then come in junior year, and now you've got to perform. You've got to lead the drills. You've got to be the man. And so it was exciting. Of course, I had some injuries along the way my junior year, but that was super exciting to get to contribute more uh, on Saturdays. So.
Yeah, what do you remember the most about that junior season for you, or was there a moment, or was there a game, or?
You know, I mean, mostly about the junior year because you can't forget it. Every time I turn around, there's the 30 for 30, and Randy Moss is going for 200 and something yards against us, and everybody's slowing it down, trying to point. Where are you at on there? My I got several nephews, and Uncle Kenny, where are you at? Where are you at on this? There's Randy Moss going for 95 yards or whatever on a bubble screen. Just the weird. He was amazing. That's probably that game is stuck in my mind just because of all the ESPN reruns of Randy doing what he did to us that year. So
Yeah, there's a lot of times where I ask, like, who, in your time at Army, who the best player you've ever faced was or went up against. I'm guessing it might be him.
I would say it's kind of hard not to choose him. I tell everybody at that game I was playing strong safety. I wasn't the free safety, and he lined up in the slot I think 8 or 9 times, and I covered him 7 of those times, and he didn't catch one ball against me. So make sure that's recorded. But when they put him out at the wideout position, he was something else. If he got a release on you, and then his quarterback was Chad Pennington.
Yeah.
He's no slouch himself. I can't remember who the center was, but he was pretty good. And then they had another receiver named Laverne Colclaw. He was like 6'5", 230 pounds, and it was a frustrating game. It was frustrating enough that I didn't play dirty, but in that game I speared Laverne Colclaw with the top of my helmet. He jumped over my teammate Scotty Williams. He jumped over him. Scotty was about 5'7", and we were in a dime or nickel package because we played them pretty well except for these blowout plays that Randy would go 80 yards on. And Laverne caught a ball, and he decides to jump over Scotty Williams, and I was back half safety, and I was running up on Scotty. I was stacking behind him, so when he picked a side, I was going to come tackle. But instead of picking a side and then helping Scotty tackle this guy, he decides to jump over Scotty. So when he's in the air, it's one of the few times I saw red. I decided I'm going to take him out of the game and hit him in the ribs. And I hit him right in the ribs, but instead of breaking his ribs, I broke my back, my 6th and 7th thoracic vertebrae. I crushed him. I finished the game. I had the wind knocked out of me. I finished the game, but I didn't play for, I think it was like 2 or 3 more games that season after breaking my back. So,
Oh man.
So it was a crazy game against those guys. And they were all real good. That was, if I remember right, that was their first year in Division I, and they were the national champions the year before, or something like that, if I remember.
I think so,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is one of your teammates saying he thought he was going to sack Pennington on the big 95-yard bubble screen. So I'm not sure. Yeah, go Army 80 is maybe one of your teammates. So
yeah. That was a great game. That's the most memorable game just because of all the players, and then obviously ESPN hasn't let us forget what Randy Moss did to us. So
yeah. What was the Army Navy game like for you in that season?
Well, I didn't play in that game, so
Okay.
I was injured again and didn't get to play in that game. That's probably one of my life's biggest disappointments.
Oh, sorry about that. So senior year, this is Conference USA time, right? You guys move into Conference USA. What do you think about that, and having to now go from an independent schedule now playing in a conference, and I guess you're seeing some different opponents and stuff like that? How do you think that transition was for you as a player and maybe your team?
I didn't put a lot of stock in it. To be honest with you, I was a little bit disappointed. We were supposed to play at Michigan that year, and so they dropped that game and told us we were going to Conference USA. And this is, I mean, there's internet at the time, but there's not social media.
Mhm.
So when we decided to go Conference USA, I felt like that's I it didn't bother me a whole lot. It didn't register with me as much as it probably should have at the time. It was just like, let's go play on Saturday. Let's go play the games. And so I didn't think a whole lot about it at the time.
Yeah, like you said at the beginning when they were recruiting you, right? They tell you that your senior year you're going to play Notre Dame and Michigan, right? And that's
Yep.
kind of gets you in, so to speak. It gets recruits interest in, and then things happen. It's happening this year, right? With Army going to the AAC coming up and having to play those 8 conference games, and then some of the games are off the schedule now, and will they be rescheduled? Who knows? I mean, but your senior year, you had a really good season. You were named all for Army first year in the Conference USA. You were named first team all Conference USA as a defensive back. I mean, had 5 interceptions, over 100 tackles. I mean, is that kind of, was that your, because I know you said junior year you had some injuries that you had to fight through and stuff. Was that kind of a little bit of validation for you that you could play at the highest level, so to speak?
I mean, I enjoyed the postseason accolades and stuff, but I really was just excited that I got to play the whole season with my teammates. You look back and I remember just going, I want to wake up on Saturday and suit up and play my ass off, and I don't want to have anything hold me back, injuries or anything else hold me back. I want to be available to play, and I want to play my ass off. And so yeah, I statistically I had a really good year. I don't know how much of that was talent and some of it was luck. You look around at our defensive secondary. We had Tony Coxum on one side and Jamar Mullen on the other, and Derek McNally, who turned into an amazing star. And then there was me. And so if you're a coach and you're game planning for Army, maybe that's the guy you throw the ball at. So I think I had way more opportunities than a lot of those guys got at the time, and took advantage of them. So that's kind of the way I look at it. It was a great season for me individually, and we beat Navy. I wish we would have put up a better fight against Air Force. I think our offense and our special teams played it really good that year. We shot ourselves in the foot a few times, thinking back about it. But it was a good year to finish with a win over Navy.
Yeah, when you can end your Army career with a win over Navy, they say that it's always bragging rights, right? When you move on to your service time, and I mean that had to be. Is that kind of the highlight of your senior year, you think, or no?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's probably the highlight of anybody who played at Army is getting to beat Navy. We beat them 3 out of the 4 years I was there, and my contributions were 0 in a couple years and a little bit, in a couple years, but just participating with those teams and going out on that field, especially in Philadelphia, which was just a fantastic place to play. That's definitely the highlight. Those Navy games are definitely the highlight.
Yeah, I mean, I was up in Foxborough for the Army Navy game this year, but I don't think they should ever move the Army Navy game out of Philly. That's just my opinion. I just think it's a pretty perfect place for the game. They're going to move it around in the next couple of years, and that's a story for another podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
So after your senior year, you get a chance to play in an All-Star game.
I
After
did.
your senior.
Yeah. So I got selected for I believe the name of it was the All-Star Gridiron Classic. At the time, I think you had the East West or the Blue Gray, and then you had the bowl out in Hawaii. And I think Brian Connolly, my teammate, got to play in one, and I think there was another teammate that got to play. I don't know. You'd have to add that in there. And I played down in Florida, and my coach, well, the gist was Florida. If you had a Florida connection, you played on the Florida team, and Dante Culpepper was their quarterback. That was a good game to see him and be around him a little bit during that week down there in Florida. So.
Wow. You remember who coached you? Was there like a former NFL coach coaching your team or no?
Who was the Pittsburgh Steelers coach forever? Noel. Chuck Noel was our coach, but he got sick while we were down there, and he ended up not coaching us. I think he was there the first weekend or the first couple days, and then I think he slid out the back door with some kind of health scare or something like that. So I don't remember who actually was our head coach for the game at the time. The gist was that all the coaches were NFL assistants, except for Shula for Florida and Noel for for Team USA, as they called us.
Wow.
And so it was entertaining to be around all those NFL coaches at the time, and they were active NFL coaches. So
yeah, you're talking Don Shula, right?
Yeah. What did I say?
No, you said Shula coached the Florida team.
Yes.
Wow, those are the two legendary coaches that were. Wow, that's something. What happens after that? Like how do you after graduation from West Point? What happens on the military side for you?
Well, soon after that, there was at the time a lot of football players, and I don't know if it's still true, but a lot of us went field artillery, and during that time period, and Matt Yost was the captain of my team. He was a year ahead of me, and Matt ended up at Fort Sill in artillery, and that kind of recruited me along to that. And I actually got to Fort Sill and got through field artillery basic course and ended up in his unit, which was 25 FA, and that was a lot of fun. We did a quick tour at NTC, and then while I was there at Fort Sill, I had a couple kids. Actually, ended up with 3 kids total before I got out of the military. But I had a couple at Fort Sill, and my wife got into dental school at the University of Oklahoma up the road in Norman, and so that kind of shifted my military career into neutral. The colonel at the time, he found out that my wife had gotten into dental school, and he called me in the office and it was more or less told me that, I needed to probably change jobs since I'm going to be commuting 83 miles every day back and forth from the Oklahoma City area. So I ended up moving over to the Field Artillery Training Center for the last couple years, and then when my service time was up, I transitioned out of that. My wife was still in dental school for another year, and so I took a pharmaceutical sales job with Johnson & Johnson and spent about 18 months working for them in Oklahoma. And it was hard. It was hard raising kids being in the military, and then it was hard raising kids being in the military and commuting an hour and a half every day. So when my wife finished dental school, she asked me to slow down a little bit, and so I took a job teaching and coaching, and we moved back home to Poplar Bluff. So that's how I ended up back in the Ozarks with her. So I did that say again.
Did you coach football or no?
Yeah, I coached football for 4 years. Ended up doing a little defensive coordinator position so I coached with them from 05, 06, 07, and 08 here in my hometown. And then
wow.
It's hard to come back and coach, and the coaching thing, my hat's off to coaches because it's not a 9-to-5 job. The negotiation with my wife, which was to be more of around the kids and in their life. What it was teaching, and then the negotiating point was that I got to coach. But during season, Saturdays and Sundays is film. You're practicing until about 7, 8 o'clock every night, and then working with some kids in the training room, and then you're game planning. And so even at the high school level, you're you're not at home. And so when my wife finally realized that, she asked me to consider not coaching anymore. And so then I just taught for a little bit, worked started work at a local bank here called U.S. Bank. It's a larger corporate bank. I think it's like the fifth largest bank in the country. Worked with them for a while, and then Commerce Bank, which is headquartered here in Missouri. Commerce Bank called me up and asked me to be their bank president, and so that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years.
Wow. Wow. Going back to the football coaching, is that something that you would want to do after your career was over, or you just kind of ended up there, so to speak?
I kind of ended up there. When we were transitioning from Oklahoma back to the Ozarks, you know, she wanted me to be just a stay-at-home dad, and I love her to death. My wife Amy is she's an angel. She's beautiful in every way. She's brilliant, and she obviously has some flaw in there because she ended up marrying me and having a couple kids. Uh, but she wanted me to be a stay at home, and I didn't think I should transition from the military, 12-hour days, 13-hour days, straight into doing nothing. I didn't think that was probably the right thing to do to my kids at the time. And so she agreed to let me teach for a little bit. And then I kind of slid in the coaching because, of course, I hadn't been gone from the high school for very long. And a lot of the athletic director and a lot of the principals were like, hey, come and coach. And so I agreed to coach the junior high, which is a shorter season and an easier thing to do, but I was going to help them out. And then, of course, a couple years later, I'm the defensive coordinator, and the hours that you spend putting together game plans and working during season and even out of season, two-a-days, coaches conferences away. After that season, my wife kind of she drew me back in and said, I think you need to reconsider. So.
Yeah, it's you look at like the Army Football Brotherhood, so to speak, and you look at there are some coaches out there at the highest with Mike Sullivan, Steelers offensive coordinator, right, former Army football player, to Mike Vitti, former fullback who's on the Army staff, and it's like it's not that life is not for everybody, right? I mean that not.
It's one of the hardest professions. I recognize why some of these coaches get paid so much. It is not easy. And if you take yourself into your hometown, if anybody's out there thinking about coaching in their hometown, your trips to Walmart, they're just not fun anymore. You're not going to want to spend time at the local recreational river or lake. I spent so much time getting into church and getting out of church, talking football. It's tough. It is the time you spend doing it, the expectations, the trying to prepare those kids to put as much knowledge as you can into those young student athletes' minds to get them right. It's not easy. It's not an easy task. There's just so many things coming at you. And if you're trying to do that and raise three kids at the same time, and your wife is a professional, it can grind on the family a little bit. So.
Man, I just want to maybe close this out and ask you a little bit about if you have any connections to the current program, if you follow how closely you follow them and what they've been doing. I mean, this year, it was a 6-6 season, but they won the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. The trophy's back at West Point. And how much is that maybe prideful to you as a former football player, seeing those games and seeing them win those games and bring back that trophy?
A lot of pride in every team every year, but obviously this year, the Commanders and Chiefs trophy, I actually got to be in Denver when they beat Air Force, and was supremely excited and happy after that game. It was they dominated in almost all facets of the game, and just I mean it was one of those situations where I rarely feel bad for my brother academies, but man, I actually did feel bad for Air Force at that. They slinked off the field. Army whipped them so bad. The body language was just screaming across the sideline on Air Force's sideline, and I that was a great game. And then I actually got to come up to New England and watch them win the Commanders in Chief Trophy up there, and it was just a great game. The team battled. They were what 2-6 and finished the last, was it 2-6 at one point, and then
Yeah.
Yep.
That Air Force game turned it around. Yeah.
Yeah, and they battled, and just just true to the character of who they were, they got it right, and just you brought up Mike Vitti and his hard nosed personality. Every time I meet him and talk to him, whether it's during the golf outing or other places that I run across him, you're just so happy to see guys like that around, future leaders of the in the Army. So it was good to see how tough they were this year.
How close are you watching those secondary guys when you're watching those Air Force and Navy games? I mean, Army's had some good safeties in the last couple of years, and Q Hammonds and Max DiDomenico made some plays in both of those games.
They did. They are way better than I was. I'll tell you that. And you brought up defensive backs. Elijah Riley played the other night, or his team did. Steelers played the other night. It amazes me the talent level that has come through our roster in the last decade or so. It's those guys are bigger, faster, stronger than my wildest dreams when I was playing back in the 90s. I don't it's amazing to watch those guys play. I got the privilege of going down on the field when they played Ohio State a few years back, and I got to roll over and see the defensive backs warm up, and they were, it was almost intimidating, and I used to be one of them, but I don't remember being anywhere near that big or fast or strong. And it's just impressive, the kind of talent that is on the squad now and has been for the last few years.
Yeah, having Bo Nicholas Paul on this podcast a couple times, he praises Darryl Dixon, the cornerbacks coach, a lot, and how he's coached him and been a mentor to him. And Danny Verpale came back to West Point this year to coach safeties, and those guys play at a pretty high level. I mean, those are the last defense for the Black Knights defense, and they really came up big in those two games especially. So really appreciate having you on, Kenny. Thanks so much for joining us. It was a snow day for me, and I was able to get a time slot open, and you filled it in great. I mean, it's so many great stories that you had to tell, and really appreciate your time. And it's great to see how well you're doing in life and how close you follow the Army football program. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Al. Have a good night.